I couldn't believe some of the things they wrote about the prequels. You know, I mean, but really beyond, I didn't like it. You ruined my childhood, and I'm still angry about the way they treated Jake Lloyd. He was only 10 years old, that boy, and he did exactly what George wanted him to do. Believe me, I understand clunky dialogue. So I almost got hornswoggled in that documentary where they weren't calling it The People versus George Lucas at the time, but I could tell from the questions they were asking me, it was an open invitation to trash George.
George Lucas raped our childhood. 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 George Lucas raped our childhood.
And I have issues with George, but I love that man.
You go to make a movie and all you do is get criticized, and people try to make decisions about what you're going to do before you do it. You know, it's not much fun, and you can't experiment. You can't do anything. You have to do it a certain way. I don't like that. I never did. I started out in experimental films, and I want to go back to experimental films. But of course, nobody wants to see experimental films.
The main thing is to protect these characters. Make sure that they still continue to live in the way that you created them.
I'm curious that the Force doesn't get muddled into a bunch of garbly-gook.
Can I just say, though, a lot of times I would say to Ryan, we got to think about the fans. And he said, no, we got to think about the story, and we got to think about our movie. Which
Welcome back to Revenge of the Prequels. Yes, we have made it to the final shitty anti-prequel video from Doug Walker, the Nostalgia Critic. Thankfully, this video ain't too long, so we should be able to get through it reasonably quickly. And move on to the bigger fish, or whatever you want to call them. There are many names one can call an OT fanboy. Let me quickly go through this mandatory disclaimer. If you don't like the prequels, then that's perfectly fine. The purpose of this series is to debunk ridiculous arguments against the films and its creator, hail his overwhelming greatness, and trying to pass these films off as objectively terrible and slandering the original creator with nonsense to fuel a false narrative to reinforce their terrible arguments. You can start watching the series here, but you should probably go back and watch episode 1 and watch until you're all caught up so you'll understand what I'm talking about, as I've been hard at work on this for many months. It's also important to note that in the earlier videos, I didn't have the same level of knowledge I possess now. Many new and interesting facts concerning the prequels, George Lucas, and the original trilogy have surfaced since then, and I've been able to incorporate those into the newer videos. And I'd like to take a quick moment to thank you, the audience, for providing those to me, as it's really helped my work and argumentation going forward. Now, we've already tackled the first 2 Nostalgia Critic videos concerning the prequels, so we are going to move on to Revenge of the Sith. So what do you say we finish plowing Doug Walker up the backside, shall we? Are you guys as fucking tired of that Disney opening as I am at this point?
So out of all the Star Wars prequels that came out, this was the one that felt the closest like a Star Wars movie.
Well, that's pretty standard when it comes to people discussing the prequels. Yeah, Revenge of the Sith wasn't that bad, or it was the least bad, when in actuality, episodes 1 and 2 were great, and Revenge of the Sith was fucking superb. But I do have an issue with how Doug has phrased this. And I will quote, "This is the prequel movie that felt the closest like a Star Wars movie." Now this is where the OT fanboy anti-prequel entitlement comes in. Doug, who exactly are you, or the rest of the circle jerk you like to bump uglies with, to define what is and is not a Star Wars movie? The answer is, you don't. You don't get the creative choice or input. Star Wars is an IP that doesn't belong to you. And in a way, it doesn't even belong to Disney either. They bought the IP, and they're making fan fictions from the IP, sure. Hell, Star Wars Theory and Fix It and Post made fan fictions of the IP without even purchasing it. And they were good fan fictions, because they respected the source material. However, in terms of the prequels, and Star Wars as a whole, The IP belongs to George Lucas. It was his IP, the creation stems from his own intellect, and same with any creator or creation. You as a recipient don't get to dictate the creative process and define what a creation is and isn't concerning itself. Now, of course, this argument doesn't apply to Disney because they are a greedy, incompetent cesspool of corporate shit, and not the original creators. But when it comes to George Lucas, the guy can make what the fuck he wants. And what he makes is Star Wars. And this applies to all of the prequels. Like it or not, it just doesn't feel like what you wanted your fanfiction of Star Wars to be.
It opens with Star Destroyers and a space battle and lightsabers and going in and rescuing people and running through the ship and shooting lasers and yeah, this is Star Wars and it's easy to follow.
Yeah, it's easy to follow because you've seen the previous 2 movies, but we'll get back to that soon. And what you've just described is just balls to the wall action and adventure and spectacle. Now, I'll agree, spectacle is certainly a part of Star Wars' identity. Anyone who says otherwise is kidding themselves. But action isn't all Star Wars is. There's world building, character development, romance, and politics. All of these gel together to make the prequels. To disregard all of these elements that make up Star Wars, like you most certainly did in your previous 2 videos, is the equivalent of this.
When are they gonna get to the fireworks factory?
It's funny how people like to quote George Lucas saying that he made these videos for children, yet it's the adults or the OT fanboys with the shitty attention spans.
Once again, the focus is on the simplicity of the characters. You understand why Anakin is angry. You understand what he's going through.
Yes, Revenge of the Sith is certainly heavily character focused, and that's a good thing, no doubt. But you can't watch Revenge of the Sith on its own and get the full context of what's going on. You can enjoy it, sure, but Anakin was always the character of interest in episodes 1 and 2. So you miss out on a fuck ton of development. His relationship with his mother, his hard upbringing on Tatooine, his relationship and arc with Padme, both as a child and as a young adult, why Anakin is frustrated with Obi-Wan, his early relationship with Palpatine, how Palpatine became Chancellor and gained absolute power, how the Clone Wars started, the ethics of the Jedi Code, and so on. And despite the straws that the OT fanboys like to grasp at, there is more to Star Wars than internal character conflict. Although that is the center point of Star Wars, I will agree. However, there's also spectacle, world building, and lore. And the previous 2 movies include a fuck ton of character development as well. So there you go.
Now, does that make up for everything? No, it's still by definition a pretty bad movie.
So let me get this straight. You praised the shit out of it, and then to adhere with your fucking circle jerk of rats, you're gonna say, yeah, nah, it's pretty shit. Please, do try and explain if you can, but just as an advance, fuck you.
But this is the first time watching it where I said, you know what? I'm glad I saw a Star Wars prequel.
Wait, what? You're glad you saw it? What happened to telling us why it was so bad? I have questions, Doug.
There's just enough good things and insight and visuals that made me glad that I paid the money to go see it. It's a few years later and Anakin finds out that Amidala is pregnant. This is already big trouble, but it's going to be even bigger trouble when he has a vision showing that she's probably going to die at childbirth. But he's becoming more chummy with Palpatine as he tells him that the ways of the dark side can actually find a way to save her life.
Yes, and this is all fine, so still waiting for the bad stuff.
Slowly but surely, Anakin is being won over to that side as Obi-Wan goes to do more of that political sword-fighting nonsense that's in the other films, but it's not as focused on here.
Obi-Wan has to hunt down General Grievous and kill or capture him to end the Clone War. What's so fucking complicated about that?
The focus is what it should be on, Anakin. And I think most people know what's gonna happen. He's gonna become Darth Vader, things are gonna go wrong, there's gonna be a big separation between him and Obi-Wan. But this is the first time it plays out closer to how you may think it's supposed to play out. There's betrayal, there's manipulation, there's big sword fights, there's explosions, there's student against teacher, the ultimate failure. And yet there's still so many other dumb scenes.
Whoops, sorry, you made the movie sound so good that I went ahead and watched it. Thanks for selling me, Doug. And alright, we're getting to the bad stuff, guys. This ought to be fun.
Like when Anakin does turn. As everybody says, it's way too fast and out of nowhere.
It's funny, Jeremy Jahns said the same thing and it didn't bode well for him. I'll let you finish before I go into depth why you're wrong.
It's one thing to say you want to learn the dark side to save your loved one, but to kill so many people, to completely switch sides and kill young ones or younglings or whatever the hell they're called, it's completely out of nowhere and the acting's not strong enough to support it.
Oh, I'm gonna have a ball with this one. Okay, firstly, yes, Anakin did turn to the dark side to save Padme, but there were a lot of contributing factors to both his turn and his actions. Number one, his perspective on the Jedi had become reversed. They had only ever seemed to hold him back, while Palpatine has only ever supported Anakin. The Jedi have only ever restricted him from gaining power, from advancing and achieving his ambition. The Jedi Code is what's hindering his life with Padme. It's what's preventing him from being able to seek adequate counsel to help him deal with his premonitions, as seen with Yoda. Anakin seeks Yoda's help, and Yoda basically tells Anakin to deal with it, in adherence with the Jedi Code. 2. Anakin is 100% convinced that the premonitions are real and Padme will die, because the exact same visions came in Attack of the Clones, and his mother died. Fun fact, it was the Jedi Code of no attachment that prevented him from acting on his premonitions sooner, or seeking out his mother sooner, likely preventing her from such a demise. 3. Anakin has embraced the dark side before. He felt the rage after his mother's death. He's killed innocents, women, children and such. He's been exposed to it, leaving one to think he would be more susceptible should he be exposed to it again, given the right circumstances. With enough stress, anxiety, desperation and anger, all of which are present in Revenge of the Sith, and leaving one to think he's more than capable of killing the younglings. In fact, the shocking nature of the crime he commits is part of the tragedy, when you see just how far he's willing to go to save his loved one. George Lucas himself described the scene of Anakin's turn as essentially him making a pact with the devil. If you haven't watched Revenge of the Sith's audio commentary, I highly suggest you do so for this particular scene. And finally, Palpatine made it extremely clear to save Padme. To obtain the power you seek, you must embrace the dark side. Do not hesitate, show no mercy.
Do what must be done, Lord Vader. Do not hesitate, show no mercy. Only then will you be strong enough with the dark side to save Padme.
To do so otherwise would be to reject the dark side. So if you're one of the people saying, why didn't he just use the clones? Well, that's why. As far as the audience needs to be concerned, Anakin sees no other way than the way he has chosen to obtain his goals. And he is 100% certain that if he doesn't do these things, then the person he loves will die. And it's not like he enjoys it either. It's not like he's turned to the dark side in a flash. Anakin committing these vile acts is all a part of his turn to the dark side. Hell, when he has a moment to reflect on his actions after slaughtering the Separatists on Mustafar, you see him shed a tear. He knows he's committed bad deeds, and there's no going back. You also see him try to bargain with himself, and rationalize his actions to still feel like the good guy, which is pretty typical of a villain in most stories. And it's funny, you comment about Hayden's acting not being convincing in these scenes, when this clip completely contradicts what you've said.
So with that said, I still think the choice of Hayden Christensen was a decent one. He's acted well in other movies, and he can demand a strong presence. I know this because any scene where he isn't told to say any bad dialogue in a monotone voice, he looks damn intimidating. Anytime there's no talking and he just has to act with his facial expressions, it really works. In my opinion, one of the more powerful scenes in the prequels is where there is no dialogue. It's when Padme and Anakin are separated, and both are contemplating what's going to happen to themselves and each other. But out of all of them, this is probably the most visual storytelling. You could watch this on mute, oh hell, I almost recommend it, and still get an idea of what's going on. It felt more like we're in the Star Wars universe, like it has a history. The scene at the opera where he's giving the backstory and the mythos, that's one of the best moments I've seen in any Star Wars movie.
Yes, I like the opera scene too. But what about the scene with Yoda and the Jedi Council explaining the dark side to Anakin? What about Dooku in Attack of the Clones talking about the corruption of the Senate and Sidious controlling them, as well as shedding some more light on Qui-Gon's backstory? I'd say the midichlorians as well, but due to collective butthurt whinging, Disney essentially retconned it, and we aren't gonna see George Lucas's 7, 8, and 9, so that was a whole lot of nothing. Good job, you fucking retards. Anyway, Doug, it's like you're saying Revenge of the Sith is the only movie of the prequels that does this, and that couldn't be further from the truth.
And everybody, whether they're doing a good job acting or not, look the part. Anakin looks amazing. This is what you would imagine a young, angry Darth Vader would look like. But yes, like I said before, I make fun of the moments you make fun of too. Darth Vader shouting, "No!" The stupid romantic dialogue that feels so forced.
First off, the romantic dialogue was radically toned down in this movie because the movie at its core isn't a romance like Attack of the Clones was. And in all honesty, it was a little disappointing that Padme wasn't a big part of this movie, because I enjoyed her presence in episodes 1 and 2 quite a bit. She was a badass. She was an idealist. There was plenty to her character that I enjoyed. But I can excuse her absence for much of this movie, as she had a narrative purpose for being excluded a lot of the time, so I can understand that. And about Darth Vader's no scene. What the fuck else was he meant to say at that moment? It doesn't come across as ridiculous to anyone with a functioning brain, because that's exactly what someone would say when they've lost their wife and unborn child, as well as murdering children to keep them alive, and for all of it to amount to approximately nothing. Like, that's fucking dark, dude. I can't imagine him saying anything else. I don't care how it sounds, because what else is he gonna say? Hell, it's what I would say. Simply because I can't think of anything else to say at that point. It's a human reaction to something so horrible.
The plot threads that don't add up, I make fun of it all too. But at the very least, I finally got something that felt a little closer to what these prequels was supposed to be.
What plot points don't make sense? Could you tell us that, please? And again, what they're supposed to be? Fuck off. You and the OT fanboy cunts don't get to dictate what another man's creation is supposed to be. There's that entitlement I spoke of.
It is dark, it is brooding, it is gritty. It has big battles and manipulation that you can actually follow this time.
We could always follow, dog. Always. Ever since I was a small boy and wore regular glasses, not sunglasses, and when I preferred blondes and not brunettes, and when I preferred Halo to Call of Duty. Oh wait, I still prefer that. Just like I still understand the Star Wars prequels, you absolute tool.
Truth be told, it's a movie I don't mind popping in every once in a while. Do I laugh at the stupid scenes? Sure, and do I still point out all the things that don't make sense? Yeah. But the fight scenes and the cinematography and the way it visually tells its story is really, really interesting. By no means perfect, I don't even really think you can say it's good.
But you just said all the reasons why it's good. I'm so confused, Doug.
But it has good things in it, some of them the best out of any of the Star Wars movies, and it's hard for me not to recommend that. The first one's interesting to watch to see just how bad it can be, but you don't really need to see it in order to figure out what's going on here, and the second one is a complete forgettable mess.
I already explained why the first two are essential to see to get the full nuance of Revenge of the Sith.
This is the first one where I felt like I actually learned a little something, or at least what the intention was. I didn't feel the emotions, but I felt the idea behind the emotions, if that makes sense.
Bullshit. You felt the emotions, Doug. We all did. To say otherwise, in all honesty, comes across as completely disingenuous. But gotta keep to the internet trends, I get that. I mean, hey, no one's gonna scrutinize my videos bashing the Star Wars prequels, right? No one is safe.
It's a tough call. If you want to see the movie to know a little bit more about what was supposed to be going on, it's interesting. But if you want an actual good movie, I still can't say that it is.
Why?
But at least it was finally feeling like Star Wars and looking like Star Wars, even if we had to put up with a lot of dumb bullshit still. I think you can figure out if this is something you would benefit from or if it would just piss you off more. And for a while, it seemed like this was the end of the Star Wars movies, but literally and figuratively, A New Hope seemed to be in the future.
Finally, we are done, we are finished, we can leave Doug and his awful argumentation to rest. Just some parting words for Doug before I finish this series. I respect Doug, I do. He's got 10 years of doing Nostalgia Critic under his belt, and I honestly do find him entertaining. These responses weren't personal, but his reviews of the prequels were awful. Awful videos, regarding a topic that I have interest in, and they had little to no substance. There's a reason I made a video responding to Jeremy Johns regarding a 3-minute video he made on a short-handed remark comparing Anakin Skywalker to Daenerys Targaryen. He thought about the video for approximately 0 seconds and didn't expect scrutiny for his awful arguments on a massive false equivalency. Doug did the exact same thing here regarding the prequel reviews. I'm sure it came as a mild shock to a lot of you just how lazy those videos were. The circle jerk that's been chastising the prequels for years isn't used to being challenged. It's become an internet norm when there's nothing to talk about, or they just need a few extra clicks. Let's make a short, bullshit video essay about why the prequels suck, or a review spreading false information or actively ignoring contradictive information to drive a further nail into the coffin of those movies, and I'm tired of it. I'm so done with these idiots on the internet who either lie about the prequels to push a narrative, haven't educated themselves and spread false information out of ignorance, or just provide awful, regurgitated, tired, unoriginal arguments that don't really hold up against a lens. I want these people to be called out. I want people to challenge them in the comments section. I want to instill fear into them before they feel like opening their fucking mouths and spreading some bullshit argument about a topic they either don't care about or want to hate on because they were so butthurt as a basement dweller when those movies came out and want to exploit or slander them for cheap views. And that there ends Revenge of the Prequels Episode 3. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you learned, hope you enjoyed. Before I go, keeping to my word, as this is the end of this video series for Episode 3, and before Episode 4 comes out, I wanted to again bring up Patreon. As you know, I do this very scarcely. It's not a topic I bring up a lot, and it's not something I want to abuse. But if you'd like to support my work going forward, which includes this channel and a book I'm currently writing, Patreon is the best place to do so. Patreon is purely a donation service. It's an easier place to reach me if you'd like to chat or interact with me. You can post channel suggestions on there or share whatever you like with me. Each patron has access to all the same things. The tiers don't discriminate. How much you'd like to donate is entirely up to you. The donations will go to simple living expenses, food, water, fuel, bills, etc. And eventually to editors and artists for my projects in the future, I hope. It's important that you know that as of right now, there's no substantive reward for patrons, and I don't want to make promises I can't keep, as that wouldn't be fair, obviously. Patreon is entirely dependent on your generosity, and I thank you for your consideration in advance. And a big thank you to these awesome individuals for your patronage and support going forward. I very much appreciate it, and I look forward to getting to know you all in the coming weeks. Now, for all of you wondering when the next Revenge of the Prequels will be, my guess is another month or so, but yes, it will be Chris Stuckman, and I can see that series having about 6 parts since his reviews are quite long and actually present some decent arguments to go up against. Though a lot of them, again, draw back to, I'm mad George Lucas didn't do this, and I'm mad George Lucas didn't do that. But we will get there, I promise. Thank you all once more, and I'll see you next time.
The main thing is to protect these characters. Make sure that they still continue to live in the way that you created them.
I sold them to the white slavers.
Star Wars The Phantom Menace was the most disappointing thing since